Ambassador Kethvar stood at the edge of the council chamber's massive viewing window, watching the last human transport ship disappear into the void. The ship's blue engine trails faded like dying stars, taking with them 3 centuries of diplomatic headaches. Around him, the other council members chatted in their native languages, relief evident in their postures. Finally, hissed Council Speaker Zethnal, her 4 arms gesturing dramatically. No more complaints about our outdated military tactics. No more demands for individual representation in our perfectly balanced system. Humans never understood that harmony requires unity. The other representatives nodded in agreement. The Veltari delegates' crystal formations glowed with satisfaction. The massive Gorthak ambassador rumbled approval from his corner. Even the usually quiet Nexari chirped their consent. For once, the council chamber felt peaceful. Humans had always been different. Where other species sought consensus, humans argued. Where others followed tradition, humans questioned everything. They built things wrong, fought wars differently, and worst of all, they convinced other species to try their chaotic methods. The council had spent decades trying to make humans fit their system, but humans never fit anywhere properly. They were too aggressive for diplomatic solutions, too creative for standard protocols, and too stubborn for proper authority. When the human ambassador had requested complete withdrawal from council space 6 months ago, the initial reaction was shock. Then came the secret relief. Where will they go? The young Kepler archive intern had asked during the negotiations. She was one of the few species dedicated to studying extinct civilizations, always asking uncomfortable questions about the past. The Rim territories, human ambassador Chen had replied calmly. Far enough from council space to avoid further conflicts. We've identified several suitable systems beyond the spiral arm. The council had approved the request immediately. Too quickly, the archive intern had muttered, but nobody listened to her concerns. The Rim territories were dangerous, unstable, and mostly unexplored. If humans wanted to exile themselves there, that was their choice. Most council members privately expected them to fail within a generation. The human exodus had taken 3 months. Ships carried everything. Families, equipment, entire cities broken down and packed away. They took their aggressive military doctrines, their chaotic democratic systems, and their irritating habit of questioning authority. They even took their artificial intelligences, despite council warnings about the dangers of thinking machines. Good riddance, Speaker Zethnal had said as the evacuation continued. Their ideas were spreading too far. Already the Jorvik system was adopting human-style local governance. The Altair colonies were experimenting with human military tactics. Better to remove the source of infection before it spreads further. Ambassador Kethvar had remained silent during these discussions. His species, the Anthari, were known for their patience and long-term thinking. Something about the human departure felt wrong to him, though he couldn't explain why. Humans had been troublemakers, yes, but they had also been innovators. Their strange methods sometimes produced unexpected results. The human ambassador had been especially calm during the final negotiations. Too calm. Ambassador Chen had accepted every condition without argument, agreed to every restriction without complaint. She had even signed documents promising that humanity would not return to council space without explicit invitation. The ease of it all made Kethvar nervous. "You seem concerned about something." The archive intern had approached him after the final departure ceremony. Her name was something unpronounceable in standard Galactic, but she went by Echo when dealing with other species. Perhaps, Kethvar had admitted. In my experience, when humans become quiet and cooperative, they are usually planning something significant. Echo had nodded enthusiastically. I've been studying their historical patterns. Humans rarely accept defeat permanently. They retreat, adapt, and return stronger. My analysis suggests this withdrawal might be strategic rather than permanent. Your concerns are noted, Speaker Zethnal had interrupted, clearly having overheard their conversation. But humans are gone now. They have no way to return without crossing council space, and they lack the technology for faster-than-light communication across such distances. Whatever they do in the Rim territories is no longer our problem. Standing now at the viewing window, Kethvar watched the last traces of human presence disappear. The council chamber felt empty despite being full of representatives. Conversations seemed duller without human arguments to spark debate. Even the air seemed stale without their constant challenges to traditional thinking. Perhaps we should establish monitoring stations along the rim, Echo suggested quietly, appearing beside him again, to ensure they're adapting successfully to their new environment. Unnecessary expense, Speaker Zethnal replied from across the chamber. Automated deep space sensors already monitor those regions for basic activity. If humans require assistance, they can request it through proper channels. But Kethavar noticed that the speaker's confidence seemed forced. Her usual commanding tone carried a slight uncertainty, as if she was trying to convince herself as much as others. The rim territories were vast and largely unexplored. Once humans disappeared into that darkness, the Council would have no way to monitor their activities. What if they find something out there? The young Veltari delegate asked suddenly. The rim territories contain many unexplored systems. Archaeological surveys suggest the presence of ancient technology. All the more reason to be glad they're gone, the Gorthak ambassador rumbled. Ancient technology is dangerous. Better that humans trigger any remaining defenses rather than proper Council citizens. Kethavar found this attitude disturbing. The Council was essentially using humans as unknowing scouts for dangerous territory. If the humans found nothing, they would struggle alone in the rim's harsh environment. If they found something dangerous, they would likely be destroyed by it. If they found something valuable, the Council could claim it later through various legal mechanisms. Either way, the Council won. It was a perfect solution to the human problem. Too perfect. Kethavar's species had learned through millennia of careful observation that perfect solutions rarely remained perfect for long. As the Council members began filing out of the chamber, already moving on to other business, Kethavar remained at the window. The void where the last human ship had disappeared looked the same as any other patch of space, but somehow it felt different, changed, as if humanity's departure had shifted something fundamental in the galaxy's balance. Echo approached him one final time. Ambassador, I've compiled a comprehensive analysis of human behavioral patterns throughout their time in Council space. Would you be willing to review it? I believe we may have made a significant miscalculation. Kethavar nodded slowly. Send me your files. Something tells me we will need that analysis sooner than anyone expects. As he walked toward his quarters, Kethavar could not shake the feeling that the Council had just made the biggest mistake in its long history. The silence left by humanity's departure felt less like peace and more like the quiet before a storm. A storm that might take centuries to arrive but would reshape everything when it finally came. 300 years had passed since the last human ship vanished into the rim territories. Council Station Alpha 7 drifted silently through the void, its automated sensors scanning the galaxy's edge for any signs of activity. Lieutenant Commander Velshan stared at the same boring readout she had monitored for the past decade. Anything interesting today? Asked her partner, a young Nexari named Chitter 7. The bird-like alien settled onto his perch beside her workstation, his bright feathers rustling with curiosity. Same as always, Velshan replied, her four eyes scanning multiple screens simultaneously. Natural energy fluctuations from stellar activity, a few asteroid impacts, some kind of massive construction project in Sector 47B, but that's probably just mining operations. She had noted the strange readings from Sector 47B for years now, metal extraction signatures on a scale that seemed far too large for any known mining operation, energy patterns that looked almost like shipyard construction, fleet movements that appeared coordinated rather than random, but every time she filed reports about these anomalies, they disappeared into the Council's vast bureaucracy. The Council had more pressing concerns than mysterious rim activity. The Corvan Trade Federation was fighting another border war with the Altair Republic. Pirate fleets had grown bolder, attacking merchant vessels along major trade routes. Internal conflicts between Council members required constant mediation. The rim territories had become an afterthought. Remember humans? Chitter 7 asked suddenly, grooming his wing feathers. My grandmother told stories about them. Said they were loud and aggressive, always starting arguments in the Council chamber. Velshan's people had longer lifespans than most species, so she actually remembered the human departure. She'd been young then, just starting her career in deep space monitoring. They were different, she admitted, always questioning everything, proposing new ideas. The Council found them exhausting. Think they're still alive out there? Chitter 7 gestured toward the rim territories with one wing. Probably not, Velshan said, though she wasn't entirely sure. The rim is harsh. No established trade routes, dangerous stellar phenomena, limited resources. Most species wouldn't survive 3 centuries without support. But even as she said it, she thought about those readings from Sector 47B. If humans had died out decades ago, what was causing such massive industrial activity? Her sensors detected metal alloys that didn't match any known Council technology. The energy signatures were completely unfamiliar, far more efficient than anything in Council space. 3,000 light-years away, Council military command struggled with their own problems. Admiral Korthak studied casualty reports from the latest pirate engagement, his massive Gorthak hands crushing the data tablet in frustration. They had lost another 3 destroyers to raiders using hit-and-run tactics. How do these pirates keep outmaneuvering our fleets? He rumbled to his staff. Our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful, our crews more experienced. They use unpredictable attack patterns, his aide replied nervously. Small, fast ships that strike quickly and retreat before we can respond. Our battle formations are designed for formal fleet engagements, not this chaotic fighting style. Admiral Korthak had served in the Council military for over 2 centuries. He remembered when humans had proposed similar tactics during the Xerian crisis, 50 years before their departure. The Council had rejected their suggestions as too aggressive and unsuited to civilized warfare. Now pirates were using those same tactics to devastating effect. The pirates weren't the only problem. The Council's military technology had stagnated. Their weapons were based on 1,000-year-old designs, refined but never revolutionized. Their ships were beautiful but slow. Their tactics were elegant but predictable. Other species had started developing their own defense forces, rather than relying on Council protection. Meanwhile, in the Kepler archive deep beneath Council Central, Echo continued her research into extinct civilizations. She had become the archive's director after her predecessor retired, and her obsession with human departure patterns had only grown stronger over the centuries. Her latest analysis was disturbing. She had found 17 separate examples in galactic history where advanced species had departed to remote regions, only to return centuries later with revolutionary technology and new philosophical systems. The pattern was consistent: withdrawal, silence, transformation, return. Humans fit the pattern perfectly, she told her research assistant, a young Enthari scholar named Kethnal. They didn't leave because they were defeated. They left because they were preparing for something. Preparing for what? Kethnal asked, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. As the great-nephew of former Ambassador Kethvar, he had inherited both his ancestors' caution and his interest in human behavioral patterns. Evolution, Echo replied simply. Every species that followed this pattern returned fundamentally changed, not just technologically but philosophically. They developed new forms of government, new approaches to science, new methods of organization. They came back as something the galaxy had never seen before. She pulled up holographic displays showing her research. The Zephyrians departed to the galactic core 2,000 years ago. When they returned, they had mastered energy matter conversion. The Void Dancers left for dark space and came back with technologies that could manipulate gravity itself. The architects withdrew to build perfect worlds, then returned to reshape entire star systems. But those are ancient legends, Kethnal protested. There's no proof any of those species actually existed. The evidence is everywhere, Echo insisted, highlighting specific data points. Ruins that don't match any known architecture. Technology fragments that operate on principles we can't understand. Entire star systems with orbital modifications that predate recorded history. Someone built these things, and the timeline matches the departure-return patterns perfectly. Back on Station Alpha 7, Velshan noticed another anomaly in Sector 47B. This time it was massive. Energy readings that registered off her scale, metal signatures indicating construction of something the size of a moon. She flagged it as urgent and sent the data to Council Central. 3 days later, she received a standard reply. Classified as natural phenomena. No further investigation required. The response came with an official seal, but something about it felt wrong. The language was too formal, too final, as if someone at Council Central wanted to prevent any investigation into the Rim territories. That's the 15th time this year, Chitter 7 observed, reading over her shoulder. Every time you report unusual activity from the Rim, they classify it as natural phenomena. Doesn't that seem strange? It did seem strange. Very strange. Velshan had been monitoring deep space for 30 years, and she had never seen her reports dismissed so consistently. Either the Council knew something about the Rim territories that they weren't sharing, or they were deliberately avoiding learning what was happening out there. That night, she made a decision that would have significant consequences. She began keeping private copies of all her Rim territory data, storing them in encrypted files that only she could access. If the Council didn't want to investigate the strange readings, she would document them herself. What Velshan didn't know was that her decision came exactly 300 years too late. In the silent depths of the Rim territories, humanity had not only survived their exile, they had thrived beyond anything the Council could imagine. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what 3 centuries of human innovation could accomplish when freed from the constraints of civilized society. The silence was about to end. The attack came without warning. One moment, the border system of Theta 9 was conducting routine trade operations. The next moment, it was gone. Not destroyed, consumed. Every planet, every space station, every living being simply disappeared, leaving behind empty space and a spreading cloud of dark energy. Admiral Korthak stared at the emergency reports flooding into Council military command. The readings made no sense. An entire star system had been stripped of all matter in less than 6 hours. No weapon signatures, no debris fields, no survivors. Just emptiness where 14 billion beings had lived and worked. What could do this? His aide whispered, her voice trembling as she processed the data. There's no technology in the galaxy capable of this level of destruction. Something from outside the galaxy, Korthak replied grimly. Deep space sensors were detecting massive objects moving through dark space beyond the spiral arm. Ships, if they could be called that. They were biological in nature but enhanced with technology that defied understanding. Each vessel was the size of a small moon. The beings controlling these ships became known as the Devourers. They communicated through actions rather than words, and their message was terrifyingly simple. They consumed matter to fuel their growth, and the galaxy represented the largest source of raw materials they had encountered in millennia. Council Speaker Zethnal called an emergency session. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the council chamber, their usual debates forgotten in the face of existential threat. For the first time in centuries, they needed to act with unity and speed. We will deploy the full council fleet, Admiral Korthak announced. 17,000 ships, the finest vessels and crews in the galaxy. We'll establish a defensive line at the Meridian sector and stop these invaders there. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 12,000 council ships had been destroyed or consumed. The Devourers lost exactly 0 vessels. Their biomechanical technology adapted to every weapon the council used, neutralizing plasma cannons, ignoring kinetic bombardments, and absorbing energy attacks to grow stronger. Worse, the Devourers demonstrated tactical intelligence that surpassed the Council's military doctrine. They fought as a unified organism, each ship anticipating the other's movements. When Council forces used standard battle formations, the Devourers countered with strategies that turned those formations into traps. They're learning faster than we can adapt, Admiral Korthak reported to the emergency session. His proud bearing had crumbled, replaced by desperate urgency. Every engagement teaches them our tactics. We need new approaches, new technologies, new strategies. Contact every species in the galaxy, Speaker Zethnal ordered. Alliance members, neutral systems, even criminal organizations. Anyone with ships or weapons. This threat supersedes all political considerations. But the responses were disappointing. Many species could offer only token forces. Others had already fallen to devourer attacks. The criminal organizations disappeared entirely, their leaders apparently deciding that hiding was better than fighting an unwinnable war. As system after system fell to the advancing devourers, desperate council members began suggesting increasingly extreme measures. The Veltari proposed using forbidden weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. The Gorthak suggested retreating to fortified core worlds and abandoning the outer territories. The Nexari recommended negotiating surrender terms. In the Kepler archive, Echo worked frantically to find any historical precedent for defeating such an enemy. Her research revealed troubling patterns. The Devourers had appeared before thousands of years ago. Previous galactic civilizations had fought them and lost. The galaxy had been consumed and regrown multiple times throughout history. According to these records, only one type of species ever successfully resisted the Devourers, she told Kethnal as they studied ancient texts. Species that fought unpredictably, used asymmetric tactics, and adapted faster than their enemies could learn. That sounds familiar, Kethnal murmured, then stopped as the realization hit him. Echo, that sounds exactly like humans, Echo finished. The species we exiled 3 centuries ago possessed exactly the characteristics that historical records suggest are necessary to fight the Devourers. They both stared at the implications. The Council had sent away their best potential allies just before facing their greatest threat. If humans had survived their exile to the Rim territories, they might represent the galaxy's only hope. We have to contact them, Kethnal said urgently. Send a probe to the Rim territories, broadcast on all frequencies. If humans are still alive out there, we need their help. Echo was already accessing the communication systems. She sent probe after probe toward the Rim territories, each carrying messages in human languages and protocols. Humanity, this is the Galactic Council. We are under attack by an extragalactic threat. Please respond if you receive this message. Days passed without response. The Devourers continued their advance, consuming 3 more star systems. Council fleets retreated again and again, unable to mount an effective defense. Billions of refugees fled toward the galactic core, carrying tales of horror from the outer territories. On Station Alpha 7, Velshan watched the Devourer advance with growing desperation. Her monitoring station was directly in their path, and orders had come to evacuate immediately. But something kept her at her post, studying the sensor readings from the Rim territories. The energy readings from Sector 47B have stopped, she told Chitter 7 as they prepared the evacuation. 3 centuries of constant activity and now nothing. Either whatever was out there has been destroyed or they're moving, Chitter 7 finished, moving toward us. The final council emergency session was chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages, proposing everything from last stand battles to immediate surrender. The Devourers were only 6 systems away from Council Central, and no military solution had proven effective. Perhaps we should consider evacuation beyond the Galactic Rim, suggested the Altair delegate. Take whatever ships remain and seek refuge in dark space until the Devourers move on. The Rim territories are our only option, Speaker Zethnal admitted reluctantly. If any habitable systems remain there, we might be able to establish colonies and wait out this crisis. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Council was now considering the same exile they had forced on humanity 3 centuries earlier. But where humans had chosen their departure, the Council was being driven out by forces beyond their ability to resist. As the debate continued, Admiral Korthak received an urgent communication from his remaining fleet commanders. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures emerging from the Rim territories. Ships, but unlike anything in our databases. They're heading directly for the Devourer fleet. The council chamber fell silent. Every representative turned to stare at the tactical displays showing the new arrivals. Ships of impossible design were accelerating toward the battle zone, at velocities that should have been fatal to any crew. Their energy signatures suggested technology that surpassed both Council and Devourer capabilities. Who are they? Speaker Zethnal whispered. Echo and Kethnal exchanged knowing looks. They both suspected the answer, but neither wanted to voice it until they were certain. After 3 centuries of silence, someone was finally returning from the Rim territories, and they were bringing technology that might change the course of the war. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity had become during their long exile. The ships appeared like ghosts emerging from dark space. One moment the void was empty, the next it filled with vessels that seemed to bend reality around them. They were sleek and organic, built from materials that shifted between metal and something that looked almost alive. No council database contained anything resembling their design. Admiral Korthak watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. The mysterious fleet numbered in the thousands, but each ship moved with precision that suggested either perfect artificial intelligence or crews trained beyond anything he had seen. They formed attack patterns that adapted in real time, flowing around Devourer defenses like water around stones. They're not using any known weapons, his tactical officer reported. voice filled with confusion. No plasma cannons, no kinetic bombardments, no missile systems. The energy readings suggest they're doing something to the Devourers at a molecular level. The Devourer bioships that had seemed unstoppable against Council forces began to falter. Their adaptive defenses, which had countered every weapon the galaxy could deploy, appeared useless against this new technology. Instead of being destroyed, the Devourer vessels simply stopped functioning, as if their biological and mechanical components had forgotten how to work together. "Sir, we're receiving a communication from the lead vessel," the communications officer announced suddenly. "Audio only in Standard Galactic. The signal is crystal clear despite the distance." Admiral Korthak straightened in his command chair. "Put it through to the council chamber immediately. Speaker Zethnal needs to hear this." The voice that filled the council chamber was distinctly human but changed somehow. It carried authority and confidence that spoke of centuries of leadership. "Council vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Federation Fleet. Maintain your current position and do not interfere with our operations." The silence that followed was complete. Every council representative stared at the communication system as if it had spoken impossible words. Humans were supposed to be extinct, or at best struggling to survive in the hostile Rim territories. They were not supposed to appear with fleets that could challenge the Devourers. Speaker Zethanol found her voice first. "Admiral Chen, this is Council Speaker Zethanol. We are grateful for your intervention. The Devourers have proven unstoppable against our forces. How are you defeating them?" "We're not defeating them," Chen replied calmly. "We're convincing them to leave. The Devourers are not evil, Speaker Zethanol. They're desperate. Their home galaxy was consumed by forces beyond their control, and they seek resources to survive. We're offering them an alternative." The council members exchanged confused glances. How could anyone negotiate with beings that consumed entire star systems? How could there be an alternative to matter consumption on such a massive scale? "We developed matter-energy conversion technology during our time in the Rim," Chen continued as if reading their thoughts. "We can provide the Devourers with the energy they need without requiring them to destroy inhabited worlds. Our artificial intelligence partners have been communicating with their hive mind, establishing protocols for peaceful coexistence." "Artificial intelligence partners?" Echo whispered to Kethnal in the archive viewing chamber. "The Council banned AI development 300 years ago because it was too dangerous. Humans never accepted that ban," Kethnal reminded her. "It was one of the conflicts that led to their departure. They argued that AI could be developed safely with proper ethical frameworks. On the tactical displays, the battle was reaching its conclusion. The Devourer fleet was withdrawing, their bioships moving away from Council space in orderly formations. They weren't fleeing, they were leaving voluntarily, following the guidance of the human vessels. "Admiral Chen," Speaker Zethanal said carefully, "we would like to thank you properly for this intervention. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss—" "We're not here for you, Speaker," Chen interrupted quietly. "We're here because the Devourers threatened our neighbors. The 17 species we've been protecting in the Rim territories requested our assistance. The implications hit the Council chamber like a physical blow. Humans had not been struggling alone in the Rim territories. They had been building something, a coalition, a federation, a new form of galactic civilization. And they had been protecting species that the Council didn't even know existed." 17 species? The Veltari delegate asked weakly. "We had no knowledge of populated systems in the Rim territories." "Because you never looked," Chen replied, and there was no anger in her voice, only sadness. "You classified the Rim as empty space and ignored any evidence to the contrary. The species there were struggling with resource scarcity, natural disasters, and isolation. They needed help, not bureaucracy." Admiral Korthak accessed his intelligence files frantically. Station Alpha 7 had been reporting unusual activity in the Rim territories for decades, but those reports had been classified as natural phenomena. The evidence had been there all along, but the Council had chosen not to see it. "What do you want from us?" Speaker Zethanal asked finally. "Surely there must be some way we can work together. The galaxy faces many challenges that require cooperation." "We want nothing from the Council," Chen said simply. "You made your position clear 3 centuries ago when you exiled us. We've moved beyond the need for your approval or assistance. Our Federation operates on principles of voluntary association, mutual aid, and adaptive governance. We don't require the rigid hierarchies that define council space. But surely some form of relationship, the Gorthic representative began. Individual species are welcome to apply for Federation membership, Chen interrupted. We've already received requests from several council worlds. The Jorvik system officially joined us last month. The Altair colonies are considering it. We don't discriminate based on past political affiliations. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and protests in dozens of languages. The idea that council member worlds were defecting to join the Human Federation was unthinkable. The council represented order, stability, and proper civilization. How could anyone choose the chaos of human-style governance? We offer technological sharing instead of restrictions. Chen continued calmly over the noise. Democratic participation instead of representation by appointment. Flexible response to local needs instead of universal mandates. And most importantly, we offer protection without requiring military service or tribute. Order, Speaker Zethnal shouted, trying to restore control. Admiral Chen, these are serious accusations about council governance. We have maintained galactic peace for over 2,000 years. Have you? Chen asked quietly. How many border wars have you mediated in the past century? How many pirate attacks went unanswered because council fleets were too slow to respond? How many species have gone extinct while waiting for council aid? You've maintained the appearance of peace while allowing suffering to continue in the shadows. The accusations hit home because they were true. The council system worked well for large, established civilizations, but poorly for struggling colonies and developing species. Their bureaucracy was designed for stability, not rapid response to crisis. Our fleets are withdrawing to Federation space, Chen announced. The Devourer threat to council territory has been neutralized. They will be establishing a new home in the void between galaxies, using technology we've provided to sustain themselves without consuming inhabited worlds. Wait, Speaker Zethnal called desperately. At least meet with us in person. We can discuss trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. There must be some basis for cooperation. Perhaps, Chen replied after a long pause. Send an ambassador to New Terra in 6 months. We'll consider establishing formal diplomatic relations, provided they come as equals seeking cooperation, rather than superiors offering conditional acceptance. The communication ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Through the viewing windows, they could see the human fleet disappearing back into dark space, their impossible ships fading from reality, as mysteriously as they had appeared. The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had returned, but not as the defeated refugees the council expected. They had evolved into something new, something that challenged every assumption about how galactic civilization should function. And worst of all, their approach seemed to be working better than the council's. 6 months later, Ambassador Kethnal stood on the observation deck of the council diplomatic vessel as it approached New Terra. The planet that humans had built as their capital was unlike anything in council space. Instead of the massive cities and formal structures that defined proper civilization, New Terra showed organic growth patterns that blended technology with natural systems. It looks almost alive, Echo observed from beside him. She had insisted on joining the diplomatic mission as the council's expert on human culture, though her knowledge was 3 centuries out of date. The cities flow with the landscape instead of dominating it. Kethnal nodded, remembering his ancestors' warnings about human unpredictability. Nothing about New Terra followed standard planetary development patterns. The orbital stations didn't crowd the space lanes, but moved in complex dances that seemed choreographed by some invisible intelligence. Ships came and went without the traffic control systems that council worlds required. Council vessel, this is New Terra approach control, came a voice over the communication system. Welcome to Federation space. Please adjust your heading to match the navigation beacon we're transmitting. Our artificial intelligence partner will guide you to the diplomatic landing zone. The council pilot looked nervous. Ambassador, they want us to follow an AI navigation system. Our protocols require biological controllers for all ship guidance near populated worlds. Follow their guidance, Kethnal decided. We're here to learn how their system works, not to impose our own. The AI navigation proved flawlessly efficient. Their ship integrated seamlessly into the traffic flow, avoiding collisions and delays that would have required hours of coordination under council systems. Whatever intelligence guided New Terra's space traffic, possessed capabilities far beyond anything the Council had developed. Admiral Sarah Chen met them at the landing zone, but she was not alone. Beside her stood representatives from species that Kethanol didn't recognize, crystalline beings that communicated through color changes, floating entities that seemed to be made of organized energy, and others that defied easy classification. "Ambassador Kethanol," Chen said warmly, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome to New Terra. These are some of our Federation partners from the Rim territories. They wanted to meet representatives from Council space." The crystalline being spoke through harmonic resonance that their translator converted to standard galactic. "We are the Resonance Collective. For centuries we believed ourselves alone in the galaxy. The humans found us and offered friendship instead of exploitation. The Council conducts regular surveys of all galactic sectors," Echo protested gently. "How did we miss so many populated systems?" "Because you looked for what you expected to find," replied the energy being, its voice like wind through crystal caves. "Your sensors scan for biological life and electromagnetic technology. We exist beyond those parameters. The humans developed broader detection methods because they assumed the universe contained surprises." As they walked through New Terra's capital city, Kethanol noted the absence of the rigid hierarchies that defined Council worlds. Humans worked alongside artificial intelligences and alien species without apparent class distinctions. Decisions seemed to emerge from discussion rather than authority. "How do you maintain order?" he asked Chen as they toured a research facility where dozens of species collaborated on projects he couldn't understand. "Without proper authority structures, how do you prevent chaos?" "We discovered that chaos and complexity aren't the same thing," Chen replied. "Our AI partners help us model the consequences of decisions before we make them. Instead of preventing change, we guide it toward beneficial outcomes. Instead of controlling diversity, we celebrate it as a source of innovation." They visited production facilities that operated without central management, education centers that adapted to individual learning styles, and governance councils where every voice carried equal weight regardless of species or origin. Everything that Council theory said should collapse into chaos instead functioned with smooth efficiency. "The Council system works well for maintaining stability," Chen acknowledged as they shared a meal with Federation leaders. "But it doesn't adapt quickly to new challenges. When the Devourers appeared, you couldn't change your tactics fast enough to counter their advantages." "And your system does adapt?" Kethanol asked. "Our system is adaptation," replied one of the AI partners, its voice emanating from speakers throughout the room. "We don't just respond to change, we anticipate it, prepare for it, and use it as fuel for growth. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to evolve." Echo leaned forward eagerly. "Could these methods work for Council worlds? Could we reform our system to incorporate Federation principles?" "That's not our decision to make," Chen said diplomatically. "Each world must choose its own path. We can share our methods and technologies, but we won't impose them. That would make us no different from the Council we left behind." During their week-long visit, Kethanol and Echo learned that the Human Federation had grown far beyond anything the Council had achieved. 27 species now belonged to it, with 12 more in the process of joining. Their technology surpassed Council capabilities in every field. Their economy operated without the resource conflicts that plagued Council space. Most disturbing of all, individual Council worlds were requesting Federation membership at an increasing rate. The Jorvik system had already joined completely. The Altair colonies were conducting a referendum. Even some core worlds were sending unofficial observers to Federation space. "Why are they leaving?" Kethanol asked Chen during their final meeting. "The Council has provided stability and security for millennia. What does the Federation offer that we cannot?" "Hope," Chen replied simply. "The Council offers the promise that tomorrow will be the same as today. We offer the promise that tomorrow will be better. People want to grow, to explore, to become more than they are. Your system discourages that. Ours thrives on it." On the journey back to Council space, Kethanol composed his report with growing reluctance. He knew that his words would change nothing. The Council leadership would dismiss Federation success as temporary, their methods as dangerous, their philosophy as naive. They would continue to believe that their way was the only proper way to govern a galaxy. But the evidence was undeniable. The Federation worked. Their voluntary association produced better results than Council authority. Their embrace of diversity created stronger solutions than council uniformity. Their willingness to change enabled faster progress than council stability. "What will you tell them?" Echo asked as they approached Council Central. "The truth," Kethanol replied. "That we made a mistake 3 centuries ago when we let humanity leave in silence. That our exile taught them to evolve while our isolation taught us to stagnate. That the galaxy no longer needs the Council's protection because someone else is providing it better." The council chamber was quieter than Kethanol remembered when he delivered his report. Many seats sat empty. Representatives had returned to their homeworlds to discuss potential Federation membership. Those who remained listened with growing dismay as he described Federation capabilities and success. "Surely this is temporary," Speaker Zethanol said when he finished. "Experimental governments always seem promising at first. When the Federation faces its first major crisis, member worlds will remember the value of stable, proven leadership." "They already faced their major crisis," Kethanol replied quietly. "They defeated the Devourers when we could not. They turned potential enemies into allies. They solved the problem we thought was unsolvable." That night, Kethanol stood once again at the council chamber's viewing window, staring out at the galaxy that no longer belonged to them. The star charts on his desk showed the shrinking boundaries of council space, surrounded by the growing expanse of Federation territory. Soon, perhaps within his lifetime, the council would govern nothing but a handful of core worlds too proud to admit their mistakes. He thought about his ancestor, Ambassador Kethfar, who had warned about the consequences of letting humanity leave in silence. The old Anthari had been right about human nature. When challenged, they didn't surrender. They evolved. When exiled, they didn't fade away. They built something better. The council had permitted humanity to leave in silence, believing that exile would solve their problems. Instead, it had created a solution that made the council irrelevant. The galaxy had moved on without them, and there was no path back to the dominance they had once taken for granted. In the depths of space, human ships continued their work of building a better galaxy. They carried with them the lessons learned during 3 centuries of exile, that diversity was strength, that change was opportunity, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to embrace it. The council had taught humanity an invaluable lesson by forcing them to leave. Sometimes the greatest gift is being compelled to find your own way, and humanity had found a way that would reshape the galaxy for millennia to come. The silence was broken. The galaxy would never be the same.